Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Episode des Podcast Wollinspiration. Ich bin Caia. Ich habe einen Online-Wollshop, den ihr unter www.lanafilia.de erreichen könnt, und ich hoste diese Podcast-Show. Heute haben wir eine Premiere. Ihr habt es vielleicht schon gemerkt, kein Jingle vorweg. Das kommt gleich. Ich mache heute eine kurze Ansage auf Deutsch und werde dann nach dem Jingle ein Interview mit Felicia von Sweet Georgia führen. Einige von euch haben mich angesprochen, dass sie es toll finden, wenn ich was über die Firmen erzähle, die ich in meinem Shop habe. Und das habe ich gleich aufgegriffen und mit Felicia quasi eine Doppelfolge Podcast gemacht. Bei mir hört ihr heute die Version, in der ich Felicia interviewe. Und im Laufe der nächsten Wochen, ich sage euch dann nochmal entsprechend Bescheid, wird es bei der Sweet Georgia Show einen Podcast geben, in dem Felicia mich interviewt. Wir haben also quasi 2 Fliegen mit einer Klappe geschlagen. Das Interview ist auf Englisch, das habe ich ja schon gesagt. Ich finde aber trotzdem, man kann Felicia super gut verstehen. Vielleicht versucht ihr einfach mal ein bisschen zuzuhören, euch ein bisschen einzuhören. Ich werde aber spätestens dann morgen im Laufe des Tages, also wenn ihr das in eurem Podcatcher habt, morgen am Sonntag, im Laufe des Tages zumindest eine kurze Zusammenfassung auf Deutsch ins Wollinspiration-Blog zu setzen, sodass ihr da auch, wenn ihr so gar nicht mitkommt, einfach mal einen kleinen Überblick habt. Was macht Felicia? Was macht die Sweet Georgia Garne so Besonderes? Und was es sonst über Sweet Georgia noch zu wissen gibt. Und jetzt wünsche ich euch viel Spaß und freue mich dann, dass wir uns dann nächsten Sonntag wieder hören zu einer gewohnten Podcast-Folge Wollinspiration. Ja, danke und bis dahin alles Liebe, eure Caia. Hello, Felicia. It is a great honor for me to have you in my podcast show. I'm introducing you Felicia Lowe, founder and creative director of Sweet Georgia Yarns. And we're talking a little about the company, the history, and what Felicia is going to do and has done before. Hello, Felicia. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, an introduction. Just tell us where are you from and what is your company about?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vancouver in Canada. That's on the west coast of Canada. And in 2004, I started a knitting blog called Sweet Georgia. And then a year later, in 2005, I started selling hand-dyed yarn on Etsy. And it was when Etsy was brand new. It had just been founded and very quickly began to grow this business. It was a side business on the side of what I was actually doing in real life. And it was just for fun. And it just grew and grew so rapidly that I became quite overwhelmed with it, actually. And then finally decided to commit and give up all my other work and just focus entirely on Sweet Georgia and building Sweet Georgia. It's a little bit crazy. It just really started because I was excited about dyeing. I dyed spinning fiber to begin with, and then started dyeing some yarn and really enjoyed it. And I was just posting my progress on the blog. And I think that really just drew people in to learning about the yarn.
Okay. So what is the main advantage of hand-dyed yarn? What do you think?
I love hand-dyed yarn. It has this kind of feeling that you just cannot get from any other kind of commercially dyed yarn, because commercially dyed yarn is generally very uniform in appearance. Everything is very solid, and hand-dyed yarns just has a depth and a richness because there's sometimes spots that are lighter, some spots that are darker, and even if it's a semi-solid or sort of solid color, when you knit it up, it still has a kind of a movement to the color. It's a living thing. It feels like it vibrates and it's living. And so that's the thing that I love about it. Even the most subtle hand-dyed yarn, it doesn't have to be like very contrasted or highly variegated. Even the most subtle, solid dyed yarn that is hand-dyed all has this quality to it. So that's the part that I love.
Yeah. And you have so many beautiful yarn bases. And I love, for example, your Tough Love sock, which is my favorite sock yarn, because it is so, the colors are brilliant. And it is really great for socks. It is just, if someone asks me, what can I do to knit some socks? I say Tough Love sock. It's almost best sock yarn I ever saw.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
No, I love it really. And the colors are so beautiful. And just tell me something about, where are your yarns from? You have yarn bases and you dye them up with, I think there are acid colors, yes?
They are acid dyes, yes.
Yeah, okay, acid dyes, yeah. Okay, so where's your yarn from? Where do you choose your yarn from? What are the quality standards a yarn must have to be a Sweet Georgia yarn?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said before, I love fiber. I was a spinner as well. So I really enjoy luxury fibers like many of us do. Like we love cashmere. I personally, I love kid mohair. So I choose a lot of yarns that have mohair in them. Yeah, absolutely. Cashmere is nice. I also like blue-faced Leicester. So a BFL is a kind of sheep breed. And they produce a really beautiful wool that is a little bit shinier, a little bit glossier. And then, of course, then we also dye a lot of merino. Merino is also very popular as well. So all of these yarn bases, I think we have somewhere around 20. It kind of sometimes goes up, sometimes goes down, depending on, what we decide. But it's usually about 20 different yarns that we carry, that we dye on. And these 20 different yarns come from about 6 different spinning mills from all over the world. So we work with mills that are in Italy, we work with mills that are in Japan, in South Africa, in South America, in Canada, in the US. Like it's very global where the yarns come from. And part of the reason is because different spinning mills specialize in different things. Different spinning mills have access to different kinds of fiber that other mills don't necessarily have the easiest access to. So it makes sense for us to have all of these different mills specialize in the thing that they do best, and then we pull from there. The other part of the reason is we, at one point in time, had a situation where we ordered yarn from one of the mills and it was stuck in delivery. The shipment of our yarn was stuck at a port because there was a big weather ice storm in New York, and it was stuck there for like almost 2 months. So we didn't have yarn coming in from that mill for 2 months. And it just made me think that if we only ordered from one supplier, we would have been in so much trouble. We would have no yarn to dye. It would have been a disaster. And so part of the reason for having multiple suppliers is so that way we can manage, inventory, manage how we do our production, make sure that everything is smooth and always the operations are running well. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it is just not only the quality, it's just also the business keep on running. Yeah, but absolutely the quality. I mean, we're definitely looking for the best yarns that we can find from these particular mills. And I do tend to like these luxury blends of fiber. I do love like mohair mixed with silk. Those are kind of like my favorite combinations because they're shiny, they have texture, they take dyes really beautifully. Okay. To speak about the dyes, how do you manage to have those colors always looking not the same because it is hand dyed, but it is just like you have got brothers and sisters, all your skins are so beautiful, picked up together. They are never twins, but they're sisters. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know. It's fantastic. Yeah, we work really, really, really hard to develop consistency in our dyeing process. I feel like it's very important that hand-dyed yarn be reliable because if you buy from an indie dyer, sometimes you get like 2 skeins that are very, very different or dye lots that are completely different. And if you're making a sweater and you bought, 4 skeins and then you need one more and you get it from another dye lot and that completely doesn't match what you've already got. That's very frustrating for the person who's knitting, like to have the end of one sleeve be some totally different color. So very, very early on, I wanted to make this one of the core principles that we follow is to try to make everything very reliable, very consistent. And so we developed all of our formulas. We measure everything that we do, measure the weight of everything, measure the volume of all the dyes to make sure that it's consistent.
Mm-hmm. So this is one thing I get to know about Sweet Georgia yarns, that there are consistently the same quality and really almost the same color, even if you've got different dye lots. So just to speak about the colors, I think Sweet Georgia yarns have brilliant colors. I don't know, they are really clear. Where did you get your inspiration for those colors from? To just try, and do you have an inspiration and think about, okay, I will dye this color? Or are you trying to make, okay, I will make some green, and then you have got, for example, melon. The colorway melon, yeah.
I'm trying to think about like how we do that sort of creative process, because it's sometimes a little bit forwards, sometimes a little bit backwards. I'm not really the kind of dyer that looks at a photograph and then pulls things out of a photograph, like pulls the colors out of a photograph. We do that for like custom projects and things like that. But generally, I dye more intuitively from what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And then I try to make that into colors. And then I kind of go forwards and backwards about how I might change that color, how I might shift that color. Maybe I add another color as a layer to change what the under color is looking like. So the inspiration is kind of like forwards and backwards, but I think a lot of the inspiration does come from food. I really, really like food.
Okay, you've got really many colorways with food names. Yeah, you've got blood orange, you've got melon, pistachio, I think was someone, and saffron and ginger and all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's I was just telling someone recently that my blog could have very easily been a food blog. Like I could have spent the past 15 years just writing about food. I would not be sad if that was the truth. But I feel very much like food is a full sensation. It's a whole body sensation, right? Like you smell it, you see it, you taste it. And that's very much what I like the yarn to be like too. That when you look at the color, you can conjure up an idea of what does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? That is that whole body sensation that I want people to feel when they see the yarn.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is really interesting. And I think our listeners can hear that you're very passionate about this. It's just, I think it's really great. So you told us you were a spinner before you were a knitter.
Oh, no, I knit since I was a kid, but then I did spin. And then when I was dyeing, I learned to dye fiber before I learned to dye.
Okay. And you talk about layers. So what is the art of dyeing in layers? Can I imagine me this process? For example, when you've got a colorway in green, you've got blue layers and green layers and maybe a red layer or something like this. Okay.
Absolutely. This is something I demonstrate in the dyeing classes that I teach. I teach these on the School of Sweet Georgia as well. But basically the idea is that if you're going to make green, you can take your blue dye and your yellow dye, mix them together to make a green dye, and then put that green dye on your yarn, and it will make green. But you can also do another technique where you apply a layer of blue dye and you let that dye set. And when you're working with acid dyes, it's really quite amazing that all of the color in the dye bath ends up soaking into the yarn, into the fiber, and the dye bath is clear. It looks like clear water at the end of it. So I do that process completely, put all the blue into the yarn, and then do another layer with yellow. And so you're using the same formula, the same volumes, the same volume of blue, the same volume of yellow, but the result that you get at the end of the day is completely different. And so the one that has been dyed in layers just appears with more depth, more richness, more nuance, more variety of hues and shades and everything. It's beautiful to look at and just more interesting to look at and play with.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I hope it is not a secret of Sweet Georgia, but can you give us an idea of how many layers you use for one yarn?
Well, all the colorways are slightly different. So it might be,
Okay.
2 layers, 3 layers, 5 layers. It all depends on which color it is. Yeah.
Okay. And that's really interesting for me because I've got no idea of dyeing. I just tried some little bits and it was all a mess. So it's not my not my favorite fiber art.
I'm very messy when I dye too.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So you mentioned the School of Sweet Georgia. Maybe you want to talk about this a little bit too?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to write a book for Interweave called Dyeing to Spin and Knit. And so after I wrote the book, I started to get requests from people to come out and teach workshops and dyeing workshops and travel. And at the same time, I have these 2 very, very young kids at home. And so my baby was I had probably like a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time. And so I was very much feeling like, well, I can't really leave my house to travel. I can't be away from my family, but I really do want to teach. I feel like I very, very strongly believe in the importance of teaching and sharing knowledge and being generous and bringing more people into this craft. So I wanted to do it. And someone many, many years ago had made a suggestion to me that, hey, why don't you videotape your dyeing workshops and then you can show them to people. And so that's how the School of Sweet Georgia started, is I started to record myself teaching dyeing workshops. And then we created a school where now it's kind of like a Netflix of fiber arts courses. The idea being that like every 2 weeks or every month, we put out a new workshop or a new course, and not all the courses are taught by me. I'm starting to build a team of teachers, and they're teaching the things that they're experts in. So whether it's carding fiber, is spinning for socks, spinning for sweater, spinning with drop spindles, or if it's tapestry weaving, all of these different topics are covered by different teachers. And so this is like quite a big project for Sweet Georgia, and something that I'm going to be continuing for the next several years.
Mm. Okay, this is very interesting. It's a great concept, I think, to teach your things due to the internet. So today we've got so many opportunities, and maybe there are some listeners who don't have heard anything about School of Sweet Georgia. So maybe they can have a look. So
yeah, we do have like members from 30 different countries right now. So I was looking from like Switzerland and Sweden and South Africa, Singapore, like yeah, everywhere.
That's really interesting. So, okay, last question, Felicia. Where did the name Sweet Georgia came from?
So it came from, my blog. I picked a name for my blog, and originally, like I was saying, it could have very easily been a food blog. I wanted to write about baking bread. I was very excited about baking at the time, and I had thought about maybe opening a bakery. And so in the back of my mind, I picked this name, Sweet Georgia. It was going to be like a bakery name, and I'm going to have this bakery downtown in Vancouver. And then I started writing, and then all the stuff that I was writing about ended up being about knitting and very few posts about baking. So I just abandoned the baking idea and just continued with the knitting idea.
Okay, so there was first the name and then the yarn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good, great. Felicia, thank you for joining my podcast show. Just tell us where we can find you. I think you have an Instagram account.
I have so many Instagram accounts. It's a little bit crazy. Yeah. We have our website. Our website is sweetgeorgiayarns.com. The school has a website. It's schoolofsweetgeorgia.com. And then we have these Instagram accounts, Sweet Georgia. We also have School of Sweet Georgia. I have my personal account, which is Felicia Lo Wong. And then last year I started another Instagram account, and it is Lo Meets Loom. And it is specifically and only about the things that I'm weaving.
Yeah, you're a passionate weaver too. Yeah, I forgot totally. That was not in my mind.
Really I feel kind of like all of these years doing dyeing and doing knitting and doing spinning, like it's all led me to this one point where I just want to do so much weaving. And so rather than putting all of my personal weaving projects on the Sweet Georgia feed, I decided to make an Instagram account just for weaving.
Okay, I don't know this, so I will have a look right now. Thanks for joining me, Felicia. Thank you for being in my podcast show, my first international guest.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was so lovely. Thank you.
Okay. And last but not least, some of the Sweet Georgia yarns can be bought in my shop. Thank you a lot. And it was a pleasure to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.